Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.
Hello everybody and welcome to Future Hacker. I'm your host, Maria Taiji, and today we're talking to Maria Paula Oliveira, also known as MP. MP is the Chief Innovation Officer for EY MENA. Under her leadership, EY MENA was awarded the Most Innovative Knowledge Enterprise in 2019, and MP herself was presented with the Excellence in Innovation Award by the Women Leadership Awards in Arab World in 2020. Additionally, she was recognized as one of the most influential corporate leaders in Singapore. 4 times innovation leader and twice an entrepreneur, MP has experience in Latin America, USA, Asia Pacific, and the Middle East. MP also worked for Experian. She co-founded 2 startups in the Silicon Valley and graduated from 500 Startups and Plug-and-Play Acceleration Program. So she's the perfect example of a future hacker. Hi, MP. How are you doing today?
Hi, Maria. I'm great. Thank you for the invitation to be here. Very excited for this conversation.
It's amazing to have you with us. Thank you so much. You have such a great journey to share, right? You were able to take a sabbatical and travel around the world. So basically, you visited 27 countries, ending up in the Silicon Valley, where you experienced firsthand the world of startups and innovation, being an entrepreneur yourself. This is life-changing in so many aspects, right? So which experiences do you feel that maybe most influenced you during that time and brought you where you are today?
That's a great question, Maria. First, when I took my sabbatical was to see different things. So I had been working for 9 years in the same company. I was based in Brazil and working in the financial industry. And I needed a break from the corporate world and I needed a break from that space. And I decided to do a round the world trip. And that really helped shape my perspective on a world scale. So it shaped how I see cultures, how I see other people, and has also taught me a lot on how I can connect with other people. So one of the things that I liked to do when I was traveling was to learn how to say hi and thank you in different languages. And I found that this was amazing because it enables me afterwards, even to this day, to connect to people in a different level. So today, for example, I met this gentleman from Lebanon, and I can say, oh, yeah, Lebanon is beautiful. I've been to Beirut, and I can say something to him in Arabic, even if it's 1 or 2 words. So it really has allowed me to connect with people on a much more personal level, in a level where I immediately, through 1 word, can create a sense of empathy with different cultures. It has also taught me a lot about myself. So when I left the corporate world, then I was like, I'm sick and tired of this life, of the game, of the politics and all of that. I'm going to travel the world and I'm going to be different. I'm going to be a traveler. And I thought I was going to find myself and discover that I was super zen and super free and completely different. And then what I found out was that I was who I was. There wasn't this greater sense of transformation, but much more a greater sense of acceptance, of understanding that that was my energy. That's what I like to do. I like to work in business. I like to help companies thrive through innovation and transformation. And I had this energy, which is sometimes overpowering, but this is who I am. So it also taught me a lot about accepting myself and accepting who I was.
I just love that. Sometimes people think that, they're taking a sabbatical and they're just going to turn into a completely different person. But at the end, you end up just finding yourself as you are and accepting that. I love that message. Let's try to frame this experience you have to your current area of expertise, right? Which cultures do you think that are more prepared in terms of adapting to uncertainties of the future? Because when you're talking about innovation and transformation, somehow you need to be adapting to whatever is going to happen, and who knows what is going to happen, right? So I would guess that there are some types of cultures that could be more open to those uncertainties than others. So by your experience, what would you say about that?
So I think for any nation, like you say, to be prepared to have an entrepreneurial ecosystem, it needs to put in place different parts of an ecosystem. It's not just one element. It's not, for example, just having venture capital or to have a good university. You have to have an ecosystem where the parts work in collaboration with each other. So you have, for example, good education providing a qualified workforce for a market that provides jobs for that qualified workforce. Otherwise, you're just exporting work. And you have to have a structure of investment and of capital that provides funds for people with ideas to develop ideas in that region. Otherwise, your entrepreneurs just leave your area. So creativity and entrepreneurship, they are inherent to the human nature. So a good place is a place that will give space for this to flourish, will give space to human creativity, to human curiosity, and to the entrepreneurial spirit. We all have that. Sometimes we execute this and we realize this, like I do, within the space of a corporation. Sometimes we realize that within creating our own space in the world. But the most important is that nations and companies and communities create this space where entrepreneurs can have the ecosystem to thrive. It's a bit cliche, but to this day, traveling all over the world and living all over the world, the place where I see that this happens with most effectiveness is in the Silicon Valley. So I was there for 2.5 years. I was completely embedded into the ecosystem, being an entrepreneur, being a co-founder of 2 early stage startups and going through the accelerator programs. And in the Silicon Valley, you have all these elements. So you have, for example, Stanford, which puts out, and Berkeley, you see Berkeley as well, which puts out amazing talent with a great education. Then you have all the tech companies who provide job for these people. And then you have the culture of venture capital, which has something that's very unique and something that I see that's starting in our home country, Brazil, which is the idea that you pay it forward. So once you receive an investment and your company succeeds and you have a great exit or you have a great acquisition or have an IPO, that from the capital that you as a founder earn from that liquidity event, that you take that capital and you don't buy a private jet and you don't buy a Ferrari, you go and invest and become an angel and become an investor and invest in the next generation of entrepreneurs. So this notion of paying it forward is very, very central to the ecosystem in the Silicon Valley, where it creates a virtuous cycle. It creates a system that retrofeeds itself. Then you have the other things that start to come. So you have accelerators. You have corporate innovation, such as the one that I lead for EY. You have those corporations creating outposts and creating their corporate innovation labs there. You have the VC funds. And then you have culture, which is this culture that really allows, it's like it nurtures, it's like fertile soil for the seeds of the entrepreneurship, where a culture, for example, where failure is not a shame. So if you go to some countries or even some communities, if you start something and it doesn't become a huge success, you are considered a failure. The business is considered a failure and the founder is considered a failure. And one of the things that I learned and that I teach every founder when I'm doing mentorships, I'm a mentor now with independent startups, but also with some accelerated programs, is a failed idea does not mean a failed startup. And a failed startup does not mean a failed founder. So we need to dissociate these ideas of failure from the personality and enable that person to continue to exercise their entrepreneurial spirit, doing other things or leveraging the resources that they build with one company to pivot and build something else. So it's a culture of transformation and not of success and failure as two opposed parts. It's a lot of failure leading to successes.
Or else people just feel afraid to dare, right? To do it differently and to be judged. And, let's talk about Latin America. We're still far from that, right? And it makes sense when you say that you see the opposite, like the culture of innovation in Silicon Valley, because that's how they That's their DNA. That's how they turned out to be the Silicon Valley, right?
It's good to have this conversation. We're both very passionate about this. But what I was going to say is that sometimes people think of companies or ecosystems as an overnight success. And Silicon Valley has been in the making for at least the last 4 decades. And it used to be this, sometimes people joke and say, oh, the apple orchard, where now it's Stanford. So it used to be a very rural community that through this development of different parts of the ecosystem retrofitting each other, it became a much more dynamic and fertile ground for innovation to abound.
So let's bring it to those big corporations, right? Most companies, they still struggle to have this culture of open innovation. So what do you think are the main challenges? Would it be this fear or failure, or maybe just this focus on the short-term results, or is it beyond that? Like, what should they do to overcome those challenges and be able to actually start incorporating over time? As you said, is not something that is going to be, let's hire this guy as chief innovation officer and let's announce that we are now innovators, right?
Yeah, that's what we call innovation theater, right? You just hire somebody, or you nominate somebody. Worse yet, you nominate somebody who's going to retire in 2 years and then put that person in charge of innovation. So the main issue that I see with corporations failing to do, especially radical disruptive innovation, it's because there is an inherent conflict between the business as usual engine and the innovation engine, because they're trying to do something that's very, very hard in any corporation, which is basically, imagine that you're a surfer and you have to surf 2 waves at the same time, or you have to surf the business as usual wave. And when you're at the top, you have to be looking at your back and see, where's the new wave coming? And then you get an impulse from the first wave, from the top of the first wave into the next wave. And that creates a lot of conflict. So one of the reasons corporate innovation programs fail is sheer time and effort dedication. So if you have a startup with 3 founders and that is their day job, each of them is putting anywhere between 60 and 100 hours per week of work on that startup. So at any given week, those 3 guys put anywhere between 180 and 300 hours of work. When you go for a big corporation and they are unsure of the risk of innovation, they are going to put some innovation projects to be a side project to somebody. Either they assign it to somebody who's not doing very good work, or if you manage to get somebody who is very good, they're going to say, okay, you can do that, but you cannot stop focusing on the business as usual, because that's your bread and butter and that's all your KPIs are. So that person is going to put 2 hours per week on this project. So then you have a startup putting 300 hours per week versus somebody putting 2 hours per week on a project. And then what happens is a startup will run several cycles of trial and learn in the span of a few weeks, because they're just putting more hours, they're just putting more efforts and more focus. This is their day to day. So they will put a prototype out, they will test, get feedback, redo, task, get feedback, redo, task, get feedback, redo, right? Until they find a solution. In the corporate world, if you have that one person who's putting 2 hours a week, it's going to take them months to achieve any learning. And by the time they do, virtually it seems like, oh my gosh, it's taking so long for John or Mary to achieve any result. Let's stop this innovation program. It doesn't lead anywhere. And that's why programs fail. That's just one aspect, okay? Another aspect, like I mentioned, is KPIs. So for a founder of a startup, their main KPI, their only KPI is to test the business model of that idea that they have and to try and develop the product, try and develop the service, try and acquire customers. So all their KPIs are around the innovation that they're doing. Normally in a corporation, unless you have dedicated teams, there are conflicting KPIs. And sometimes there are no KPIs for innovation. So then what will people do? They're going to work on a side project, or they're going to work on something that is connected directly to their bonus at quarter end. Okay, so then what happens is this idea or this good intentions that are not materialized into actual concrete measures. So I sometimes use the metaphor, Maria, of innovation muscles. And I think of the Chief Innovation Officer as a corporate personal trainer. It's a person that will work with the company as a catalyst to help the company to succeed in what they want using the right methods, the right processes, the right techniques. But if you hire a personal trainer in January 1st, because one of your New Year's resolution is to get a more healthy lifestyle, and by January 3rd, you decide you don't really want to go to the gym and chocolate cake is much better than salad, then there's nothing that a personal trainer can do for you, you know? And this is so human. We do that every year or every Sunday or every Monday. We say, oh, we're going to start a diet. We're going to start going to the gym. And then we fail because there is a conflict that is inherently human in us. And this is the conflict that with discipline and with dedication and with focus that I try to overcome when I lead a corporate innovation team.
I love that. And it makes so much sense. And at the end, I think it's up to the higher management to make this decision, right? It's up to the stakeholders and the C-level to make a decision, okay, let's do it right. And that's a great term, the innovation theater, right?
Innovation theater is when they think they want to do it right, but they don't really, like they want the easy way.
Just hire someone. Yes, I love that.
It's like they want the easy way, you know, like they want everybody to think they're in a fitness program, but they really aren't, you know? And when you said before, it's the C-level, it really takes the C-level to commit and to commit through the pain that we're going to go through. It's the pain of the uncertainty. It's the pain of failure. It's the pain, you mentioned long-term and short-term. So one of the things that companies that are very innovative really struggle is when they become public companies, because then they get the pressure from stakeholders and from investors to churn out financial results and financial growth quarter after quarter. And that really incentivizes and encourages incremental innovation and a little bit of adjacent innovation, but it disincentivizes, disencourages any attempt to disruptive innovation, because disruptive innovation in the short term, it might decrease margins because you're investing on things that you don't know if they're going to bring an actual return. And you have to invest before you know about the return. So it's like you're planting a seed and you know it's a lettuce or you know it's a mango tree, right? But you don't know if the seed is going to come out. And you don't know if it's going to survive, but you still need to invest. You need to provide a good soil. You need to put the water. So you need to do a lot of things before you can get your first mango, right? So this is the mentality that is counter to the financial markets mentality. And that's why you have different instruments for startups, which is the venture capital, not the traditional financial markets, because you need a different set of KPIs, you need a different set of measures, you need a different set of incentives to encourage people who are trying to find business models that work for those ideas that they have. I like to say that a startup is like a love story. It's the love story between an idea and a business model. So a lot of times we have good ideas, but then people will ask us, how are you going to make a business out of that? And that's the quest, that's the search of love that this idea is going and trying to date different business models until it finds one that is true love. You know, I'm getting a bit romantic here, but...
But so that's a great way to end our first episode. We have so much to talk about yet. So people, just keep listening because we have a lot of great content to cover. Be right back.
Future Hacker. Life. Path. Future.